We salute you. You're watching the Get Busy Living podcast and with the wonderful Amanda Fisher this morning, and I'm Dr. Scott from Six and Acupuncture and the Healthy Habits Club. And we thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on this morning and giving us your time. I know there was a bit of a muck around with the times and sessions and blah blah blah, but we had a bit of a false start. But now we're off and racing. So thank you so much for coming in and giving us your time, and also the gold nuggets of information that I'm sure you'll have.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to talk and share what I can to help your listeners.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's right, Amanda. And so that leads me to the first question. So tell us, Amanda, what gets you out of bed every morning?
What gets me out of bed every morning is helping people. I get a kick out of making a difference, of doing something that moves somebody from somewhere where they're maybe a bit stuck or not sure, to getting knowledge and understanding about what they're doing. So for me, it's all about helping and basically giving back. So all the knowledge I've gained over the years, how can I use that to help other people to do things more efficiently, more quickly, without making maybe some of the mistakes that I've made or seen made, and do that. So yes, helping people and seeing those changes is what gets me out of bed every day.
That's awesome, and thank you so much for helping the community, especially our business owners, with what's going on in their lives, and also the business is their lives. So that's a great attribute to do and to have, because we're trying to help as many people as possible, and that's commendable. Thank you for doing that, Amanda. So I'll move on to the next question. So I see that you're an accountant, but you're now a business consultant. But so you're the Margin Optimiser for manufacturers. That's what it says in your LinkedIn profile. So tell us what the hell got you into that?
Well, it's a bit of a long-winded story, so if you'll bear with me, I'll give you a bit.
That's usually what happens. Yeah, that's
so
good.
When I was a child growing up, we used to travel for holidays, standard things. But one of the things my parents did was they'd take us through factories. Now, it might have been, standard chocolate factory for children, yes, I get it. But it was cheese factories, it was bakeries, it was all sorts of different factories. And I don't remember now eating the samples at the end. What struck me going through those factories was watching something, go in somewhere, go through some machine which you couldn't see what it did, and then come out doing something else, and then the people putting things together in packets, which they sometimes still do, but some of that's automated now. But just watching how that kind of, the inputs changed along the way and came out the other end, I was just fascinated with that whole process. Then at school, my favourite subjects were sciences, and particularly chemistry. And again, it's that kind of putting things together and see what comes out at the end. I started university doing a science degree, majoring in chemistry, and then I was in Canada at the time, and the standard there is to go work the summer holidays so you can afford to put yourself through uni for the next year. And I got an admin type job. And I asked the guy that I worked under, what did you do to get to be where you are? Because it looked interesting and I was enjoying it. He said, I did a commerce degree. He said, but don't do what I did. I did a general commerce degree. He said, maybe in accounting, because that'll open a lot more doors. Now, I had no idea what accounting was. None whatsoever. I said, okay. I went home and said, I'm going to do accounting. And my mother turned around and said, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to be a chartered accountant. But again, no idea what that was. Fast forward, came back to Australia and started my commerce accounting degree at Uni New South Wales. Put my work full time, put myself through uni part time, and became ultimately the chartered accountant that my mother told me to become. But I was lucky because I loved it, and I also was extra lucky because the vast majority of traineeships in the accounting profession are in audit. and I got lucky and got a job in business services and tax. So I didn't go down that, well, I consider that dreadful audit path. I was in the business services staff side. So I got to see lots of different businesses, and I moved jobs a few times so I could broaden my experience. And it was probably dating myself a little bit or aging myself. So it was back in the times when computers were sort of just coming in. And one of my jobs became installing computer software into businesses. And then part of that is where I got involved in sort of the automation, the taking off from manual handwritten cash books into automating it. So part of that became efficiencies and automation from that side. And I also got what we would now call fractional CFO or fractional financial controller roles, helping businesses on a part-time basis, a day a week or whatever, as part of my job working for the chartered accounting firm. So I got to see what I call the other side, and I love that. So when the opportunity came for me to get and do a full-time role on the other side, working in-house in a business, I took it and loved it. And what then sort of brought me back then to what I've found over the years with clients and working with businesses is the need to understand the detail. Like, as what I call tax accounts, we prepare a set of financials at the end of the financial year. We have cost of sales and we have expenses alphabetical from A to Z. Great, fine, but it's not useful or usable for the owner of the business, because you need to understand how much is your employment costs, how much are your just overhead fixed costs, what are the breakdown in those costs. But more than that, cost of sales provides a multitude of things. Not in food manufacturing, but one of my clients they had three parts to the business. There were three guys working together. One was web design, one was graphic design, and the other one was sort of IT support. And they each thought that everything was going well. The graphic design was booming, it was flat out busy, etc., etc. But they didn't really know, and they weren't making as much money as they wanted. So we delved in and we split the income and the expenses by the three divisions. And lo and behold, the graphic design business was in those days selling banners for Facebook and stuff at a cheap rate and was losing money for the amount of time they put into it. They were losing money. The website side was doing okay, was making a bit of money, and the IT actually was making them big. So the IT was supporting the graphic design. And from that, they were able to make decisions. And I then went back, yes, but this is the same thing that happens in manufacturing, in food manufacturing. You're making the different products. But when you mush all the numbers in together into one big cost of goods sold, you don't know how much is being made in one. So I got to a point where, it was about 10 years ago, where I went, you know what, being a tax accountant is anybody and everybody can do it. And there's no fancy, yes, if you go this way, you'll save money. It's all pretty black and white, straight these days. And I had been for some years prior to that getting into what I called then the education space, helping business owners to understand their numbers. And that's during the time period that I wrote most of my books on how to understand the numbers from a business owner's perspective. And in 2015, I sold my practice so that I could concentrate on the education space and also to focus in and help those businesses that could see there was value in understanding their numbers. And I came back then sort of that full circle to, well, who can I help best? Well, that whole chemistry, production, manufacturing process that I kind of got involved with, I came back to the fore as like, this is what I love and what I do. And whether it's someone who's producing their sole product is quiches, which I had a business in Sydney that was doing that, or whether they're doing small goods, like prosciutto and Black Forest ham, etc., those things, or whether they're wholesale cake bakeries or whatever they are. There's so many different nuances within them, and I guess I love food, but don't we all? But having said that, it's to me, it's understanding the production process, and it's not something that most accountants do. So I felt there was a gap in the market that accountants don't really like getting involved in that production line type exercise because it is complex, and if you don't understand it, you don't understand it. But to be able to bring together sort of the production side and the finance side and meld them together, because they're often kind of separated and they're so much integrated, as all parts of business are.
Well, absolutely, and that's been my experience in the past with accountants is the auditing side of things. So they're worried about compliance and making sure that everything's looking good numbers wise.
Yes.
But they don't ever look at the systems in the business. They don't understand any of that. Yeah, it's very rare to find an accountant that will look outside of that auditing. The toilet roll, I would call it. It's just like doctors, no different. They look through a toilet roll. So if you're fit in the toilet roll, they can help you. But if you're outside of the toilet roll, they can,
yeah. And the other side of it is, yes, there are business coaches that know how to run businesses, but again, do they understand the production line, the production processes and efficiencies and wastage, and how to identify all of that, and pull that together with the financial side. So yeah.
And investing as well. They find it difficult to understand about investing. They understand about the compliance side of the investing. Yeah. They understand that back to front, but they don't understand. They have to be basic. They have to have someone that knows what they're doing.
That's right. And I remember with the small goods manufacturer, when he was getting a lot of requests from his customers for sliced, which is of course what we all buy now, sliced prosciutto, etc., etc. But previously, it was the full thing that he'd sell off to the deli, and the deli would then, you'd go to the deli and they'd slice it specifically for you when you ordered. And they were doing it manually, and he went, you know what? I need to get an automated slicing machine. Sourced one. It was a lot of money. We went through then the whole process of, well, how much is it going to cost? What's the cost savings? There was a labour differential in there, and do you have enough business to warrant it? And that was the question, because there was some, but was it going? And he took a punt. Unfortunately, took a punt about 6 months before the tax office announced a 100% write-off for equipment at large numbers. So he missed the tax deduction up front, which was frustrating. But he got it in, and business just boomed. And again, the other part of it was, okay, well, where do we fit it in the factory? Because his factory floor, he had a great flow, but it's like, okay, now we're going to have to move some of the other equipment around a little bit to make sure that we can fit it in and that the flow continues. And because that's all about efficiency. It's not about going, okay, well, now we're at this point. Now, okay, the only place we can put it is over there. So now we've got to move everything from here to there. And there's, time wasted in that, and it multiplies out. So all of those things, which, the tax accountant doesn't have a clue about, unfortunately.
No. And, usually they have to refer you to someone.
Yeah.
Usually they have to. And unless unless the business owner can foresee that they need help in a different field to what the accountant can provide, then sometimes you can get sometimes businesses can go bust because they're leaning too much on the advice from their accountant. But sometimes the accountant doesn't know themselves. It's not their fault. It's just what they're taught.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that I learned fairly early on in the piece was, yes, financial statements prepared after the end of the year, that's fine for compliance, but you need to be looking at them now in the near future and the longer future too, but you need to be looking at those numbers. So looking at your figures after 12 months. Too late. The horse has bolted if you've got a problem. If you're looking at the figures every month, every quarter, then you can pivot, you can change, you can sort of go, hang on, something's not right here. We need to change something and work out what that something is, because you've got the data to work with. And that's my, I guess that's the part of what gets me up in the morning, and is that whole getting into the neat detail of the data so that the business owners can make informed decisions. And ultimately, from my perspective, it's about teaching them so they've got the knowledge to be able to make the decisions themselves. It's not about relying on me. I'm just a conduit to get the knowledge to them so that they can make their own decisions. Maybe have a second question, backstop opinion, but to be able to understand what their numbers are and to know what to look for and what those numbers mean. And when I see that change happen with someone who says, as long as I got money in the bank, I'm fine, to then looking at the figures and going, hang on a minute, that number doesn't look right. And go, yeah, you're right, it's not right. We need to fix it. So
there's I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name is Brad Sugars.
Yes.
He's a billionaire. He's from Sydney, actually. Oh, well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Rural New South Wales.
Yeah.
And he lives in the States now. He lives in California, I believe. Anyway, he says he calls it levers. So that you're talking about margins. He talks about, because he's done a lot of interviews with people that he gets advice from. And that's what he talks about is, he talks about marketing as the most important part of your business. Why? Because it controls the cash flow, it controls everything, it controls your sales. But then he goes on to talk about reducing your costs, and because there's only two ways to make more money, and that's either you increase your sales, increase your marketing, or reduce your costs. So that's where he talks about levers. So when you're talking about the systems that are in place, once you know your systems and then you know your numbers as well on top of that, then you can start to pull those levers.
Right. And for a lot of businesses, it's about getting the systems in place so that those numbers are available. So you've got the data to then be able to pull those levers. And definitely, yes, you can reduce costs, but there's a limit to how far you can reduce costs. So it becomes definitely the marketing is the important part of the business, because without sales, you don't have a business. So the first thing is you've got to get the sales in, then you've got to make sure that you're getting the best result from those sales. And for me, it's not about screwing down your suppliers, because that's not sustainable. I've just gone through a potential buyout on another business, and the way they do business is they get quotes from 3 or 4 different places on. They start a quote with one, and let's say it's $100. Then they go to the next one and say, well, can you beat $100? And they come in at 95, and then they go to the next one, and they get it down. But then the person that's doing it for, say, $80 might be making $2 margin or something like that. It's not sustainable. And so they end up then burning out, because eventually someone at that $80 mark, that supplier eventually works out, this isn't making us any money. And then kind of goes, no. And then they start the whole process again. It's like, no, we're all held. Yes, we don't want to pay more than we have to, but equally we also want to support our suppliers and make sure they're making money as well. So it's, there's a limitation to your cost savings. There's certainly costs in every business I see that are not necessary. And one of the classics is the subscriptions to things. You sign up to subscribe to something, and the next thing you know, you're not using that software or that system, and you've been paying for it for 6 months. So there's always a few things that when you do a bit of a quick review that you can cut out very easily. But when you talk about the actual manufacturing and production side, it's not about getting the cheapest price, and depending, I guess, on what you're trying to prove and do. If you want to reduce your costs and use a lesser quality in product in your thing. I saw I saw a video from one of the chocolate makers talking about how the big chocolate companies now are not using so much cacao butter because it's so expensive, and they're replacing it with something vegetable oil or something else. It's not quite vegetable oil, but simplistically, they're replacing it with something else so that it's not as expensive. Well, yes, but you just downgraded the tastiness, the quality of the product. One of the things that I remember from the early days of Mrs. Fields cookies when they first came to Australia, particularly, was that they promoted that they used all butter. So they're not using margarine or vegetable oil or whatever, it's butter. And it's that sort of thing, because once you start to change that and reduce that in order to save costs, then you no longer have the same product. And your customers will notice.
Sorry. Yeah. Don't get me on that. Come on, man. Don't get me on. Yeah, seeded oils and olive oil and just the seeded oil. So canola oil, for instance, this is a perfect example. It actually used to be sowing. It was sowing oil.
Yeah.
It was used to sowing oil. So then, for some reason, 1988, they decided, well, it's edible, so let's sell it to the masses. And of course, it's 1/3 of the price of olive oil.
Yeah.
But the taste is just totally different. And number two is, it's poison. It's killing people. You're worried about a cholesterol issue. Look at the oil you're eating. And the problem is 90% of all 90%, 9 out of 10 restaurants use canola oil. Why? Because it's cheaper. And because the TGA said it's like Therapeutic Goods Administration said it's okay to use, they're happy to poison everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you're exactly right. That's just one example. There's so many different examples of how. There was a gentleman that was doing mass production of printing. So because my brother was a printer, and I knew a little bit about printing because of him, and he went and bought it. So what I noticed with machinery, especially, is warranty. So if the warranty on your machinery is 12 months, don't buy it. Because the warranty on the the warranty on the machinery that's 20 years is far greater and far better, and you're going to spend a lot less on the machinery that's 20 years in warranty than it is for the warranty for the machinery that's 12 months. Why? Because you're going to keep rebuying it every 12 months. It screws up, and this is what took me a while to understand, is that machinery is built only for a certain amount of time. It's not. it's not. Your warranty is just a guide. So but they know that after 12 months you're going to get problems.
Yep.
The insurance companies know. The insurance companies know because they've crunched the numbers. Because they've got accountants to do that.
They've worked it out. And they're now not producing those machines with the same quality that they used to produce, say, 5, 10, 20 years ago. Where, 20 years ago, they were producing those machines with, solid steel and et cetera, that was built to last. Now, they're using more disposable type product to build a similar thing. Yeah. And therefore, it's not going to last. It's not going to survive the exercise. And it's interesting you mentioned the printing, because one of the companies I'm working with at the moment is in printing. So whilst I say that my focus is food manufacturing, the same logic applies across multiple industries. And it's about, again, finding what part of that printing operation is making the money and what part is perhaps not making as money. So it might be a pricing issue. You may be needing to look at okay, you're actually underpricing on something. Or knowing that you're underpricing it might be a lead generation kind of, okay, you get them in the door with a cheap business card, and now I can get all their other printing, which is where I make my money. So it's having that information that's so vital.
Yeah, well, and this is what I'm trying to say. A lot of accountants don't know that. They don't know about, you know, and you're talking about food manufacturing. Like bakers is a perfect example. They get machinery that they need to buy for a long time. Why? Because they're using it every day. They don't get a day off. They have to get someone else to come in and work for them because they got to be open every day.
Yep.
It's very rare that you'll ever see a bakery close. They're usually open every day.
That's right, exactly. And that machinery has to keep operating. And
Every day.
And it's like any of those, like any kind of production type process. If you've got machinery that fails, whatever that means, in the sense that it's broken down, it fails for some reason, your production line has just come to a stop, or your banking has come to a stop. Whilst you fix it or get someone in to fix it, in the meantime, that's lost money, lost revenue, lost wages. Like, it's costing you money to keep things going, and you don't have the revenue because you haven't baked another 100 loaves of bread because the thing's broken down. Like, it's
and then you got
and most businesses can't afford to have like a backup machine. Like, what we talk about in business often is, you don't want to have, sort of one person that knows something and no one else knows how to do it, because that person's off sick or on holidays, then, you've got no one to do it. And it's the same kind of with your machinery. You almost want to have that duplicate machine of everything, but then you can't afford it because this machinery costs a lot of money. So you can't afford to. So you've got to be. So it's worthwhile to be spending the money to buy the better quality machine, as you say, that's going to have the, say, 20-year warranty, the longer warranty on it, because it's going to last. It's going to put up with that, 7-day a week being used over and over. 16-hour, 24-hour shifts, whatever they are. Like, it's got to be robust and strong to withstand that continual use.
How long have you been in Queensland? You haven't been here that long. How long?
No, so I moved up about 4 months. I actually think coming up to 4 months now. 4 months ago.
4 months. Did they have Eagle Boys down in New South Wales? Eagle Boys Pizza? Did they have Eagle Boys Pizza?
No, I think that's a Queensland brand, Eagle Boys.
Yeah. It's like Domino's. It's all pretty much the same. Anyway, the franchisee that I worked for, years and years ago, I used to be a delivery. I used to deliver pizza. Anyway, the one day the machine broke down, the mixer.
Right.
This is a perfect example. So the mixer broke down. So the whole kaput. And he had an older one, but it didn't work very well, and it took a lot longer to do. So what he did was he got us all in, the drivers, and we had to mix it by hand.
Right. Okay.
Well, how did that go? Well, it wasn't as consistent. It wasn't the dough wasn't as consistent as the machine. But yeah, we got it done. But it would have cost him a lot more in wages than that machine. So he ended up buying two. He ended up buying two of them. He outlaid the money and got two of them. And he was a lateral thinker, but he didn't. He wasn't. He wouldn't. He knew if he shut the doors that he was going to lose even more money.
That's right, and that is the issue. That he was there.
So he realised.
Yeah, if he'd shut the doors, he would have not only missed that day or night's revenue, but he would have damaged his reputation with those customers in that area, and would have been hard struggle to get them back again. So you've got to do whatever it takes to keep things rolling and keep it happening, and that's one of the things that's really fascinating about business owners that are in this space is that ability to innovate, to switch, to swap, to work out a stopgap. How do we sort something while something's not quite working? Thinking outside the box and thinking differently about doing it. I think that's cool. Bringing in the drivers to do the mixing. I think that's very clever. Yeah, that's cool.
So he got us all in. I got a call out of the out of the blue, because usually your shift started like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
When they'd start to pick up, and you'd have a few of us together. Anyway, we got a call at like 8 in the morning, and he said, "Come in as soon as you can. I want you to start doughing." I said, "What? What am I doing? I'm doughing." He said, "Yeah, but you're going to be mixing dough." I said, "Okay." I said, "There's the mixer going down." He said, "Yeah."
So does that mean you make a good pizza now?
I said to him, "Do I get extra dough for this?" He said, "Yes, you already are." He's a good guy. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
If Owen's watching, you're a great guy, Owen. So yeah, what was I going to say? So yeah, so you can see from the systems point of view that sometimes you've got to just change things. And like you said, it's also foreseeing the things that can go wrong. And when there is a part of your business that is reliant on that part of the business, the other parts, I should say, the other parts are relying on that part of the business. Sometimes you got to change things up a little bit. So so did you do any other qualifications except for the accounting degree? Did you do anything else?
No. That's all I've done. So the rest of it's really been just watching, listening, asking questions along the way, and just that curiosity and learning that. So actually, when I say no, that's not true. I've done a lot of other learning in sales and marketing, personal development, and other things along the way. But in terms of the food manufacturing specifically, no, other than just observing, watching, and learning, and just. I think the other thing sometimes is not knowing is a good way of not knowing, but coming in sort of with fresh eyes that aren't preconceived about things. You kind of go, okay, tell me about this, tell me about that. What's this? What's that? Why is this happening? Okay, what's that over there? And in doing that, you actually uncover the things that they haven't seen because it's just business as usual for them. But when you're coming in with a sort of a fresh set of eyes, it can actually come up with some issues and challenges that, actually I haven't thought about that. Yes, it's the way we've always done it. But why have we always done it? Couldn't you do this or that and cut out that step? And I'm not saying cut out the step, but to begin a bit more about the flow. Like, why are you going from here to there to the other? I was doing some work with a avocado process. No, it wasn't. It was a citrus processing factory. So the fruit comes in from the farmers, and then it goes through this whole sorting process to come out the other end. And so it goes from sort of one end to the other, and then at that end, the guys it would be put into boxes, packed into boxes, put into pallets, and stacked onto a pallet, and then the forklift driver would then take it to the cool room. But what they were doing was the forklift driver was having to go all the way back up the other end to get around to the thing. So we had forklifts coming backwards and forwards. Like, it just didn't make sense. So they swapped it around so that once they finished the packaging, the forklift driver just kind of went from there to there to put it in and out of the cold room. I think the cold room, when they arrived, was up. They made it up that end, so that went straight out onto the production line. And then when it was finished and packed, it went into the thing this way. So just silly things like that sound silly, but health and safety, like in terms of, they had those forklifts going all over the place. It was nuts. Much more safe, firstly. Secondly, just the time involvement. Instead of spending 3 minutes to drive up there and deliver it, it was being done in 30 seconds. Like, it's just that time and motion stuff. But because that was the way it had been set up and was always done, no one had asked. No one had thought about it. that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. They do experiments on that. You've heard about the 13 monkeys. You've heard of that
Yep,
one? They did the experiment on the 13 monkeys.
yep,
Yeah, so that it's the same. It's the same principle. So, uh, yeah, the monkeys. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, sometimes you gotta think outside the box and yeah, you've got to change things up. So, and look, qualifications aren't always beneficial. Um, Most of the billionaires in the world don't have a formal education.
correct. Yeah, that's it. It's all
Uh,
about
Brad
smart.
Sugars is a Brad Sugars is a perfect example. He never actually went to university. He did his high school diploma, but he was a millionaire by the time he was 21 years of age. That's crazy.
Yeah,
He was
back in
he, he was he was paid because he wasn't a millionaire by 18.
yep, there you
So
go.
yeah, um, Robert Kiyosaki, he only got a formal education because he was in the military.
Yeah.
Other because he was a pilot, he was a fighter pilot
Mm, yep.
um, in the military, and that's what he said. We used to train every day to crash. He said you should do the same thing with your business.
Yeah,
You should do the same thing.
yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it. But I think that's often where we come unstuck, as we kind of go, blue sky, kind of, rose tinted glasses, and looking at it, going, yes, everything will be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine, and we don't prepare for what happens when things go wrong. And COVID was a classic example of that. Like, how many people were prepared for that? Obviously, it's not something you'd expect to happen, but how many people were prepared for some kind of economic calamity that was going to massively impact their business? People don't. And then how quickly are you able to pivot if you need to be able to get through that? Like, what does that look like? So yes, it's an interesting way, and something I think everybody needs to have that kind of, okay, well, something goes wrong, what do we do? How do we, what might we be doing? At least have a might be option.
Crash. Get your parachute ready.
I don't like the idea of crashing. No, it's not good.
But yeah, like you said, he was just using that as an example because he said a lot of businesses don't put those systems in place where if something does go wrong, then we can do this, we change things up.
What are
Uh,
those safety nets? Yeah.
yeah, it's a safety issue, and you would see that a lot. Yeah, you would see that a lot in a lot of businesses because it's very intimate. Yeah, Amanda, it's very intimate to go into someone's finances,
Right.
especially
All right.
especially a business owner's finances,
Yeah.
because banks banks love giving unsecured loans to businesses. They love that, but they don't like giving secured loans to businesses.
It's
How
really
strange.
interesting. Oh no, it is really interesting, and I've certainly seen businesses with multiple unsecured bank type finance, whether it's bank or third tier kind of funding, uh, of significant amounts of money too. Like not just the $20,000 kind of exercise, but hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Yep.
and it's not always the right thing for them, and um, it's it can then be a challenge with what that looks like to help get them through that, and get out the other end and repay them off. And because the more debt you take on, the more you've got to be doing all the time, more business you have to have,
Yep.
in order to make sure you're paying off. And then you're not just paying the interest; you're paying the principal back, which means you're making a profit, which means you're taxable. Uh, so it's a real catch-22 on some of those, which
Yeah.
yeah,
If you want to buy the property you're renting, you're screwed. But if you want to buy borrow money to pay your wages for your employees, they're willing to. It's very strange. And you're right. It's I get the emails every day. I get at least 2 or 3 a day. Yeah, how much do you want to borrow this? How much do you want to borrow now? We can give you a line of credit. I get those emails every
Right?
day.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing those, but I'm not surprised that they exist. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as you register your business, they start throwing emails at you. How the hell do they know this stuff?
And and the problem I have with all that is it sounds great. You go, oh yeah, okay, I've got some money to get myself going, but it's the reason the number one reason most businesses fail in general is due to what I call the combination of lack of working capital, so lack of money up front to get the business off the ground, and poor cash flow, which is kind of interrelated. Like if you don't have enough money to fund when you're starting out, to fund your business for 12 months until you've got income coming in, and then to still have a solid chunk of money in the bank all the time so that you can meet your payments when they come through. It's, you've started off behind with, you know, behind the 8 ball before you start. Like you're starting off with one hand tied behind your back, trying to do business because you actually don't have the starting point you should have to set the business up for success. And it's one of the things that I try and encourage people to do is to have what I call a stash of cash, which isn't cash in physical stuff, it's a bank account, but a separate bank account where you're putting funds aside. And in the first instance, it may just be putting funds aside so that you've got the funds for your GST, your super, your PAYG. Obviously, the super's about to change with pay-as-you-go super. The but having the funds for that, but also putting money away for income tax, for rainy day, there's another business that I met this guy before he started in business, and one of the things I said to him, which he keeps telling me about, is I told him to make sure you've got a runway of 6 months of money to cover your costs. So you've always got money in the bank, mortgage offset account if need be, whatever, but you've got funds available that can run you for 6 months, even if you have no income. He's run that business like that ever since. Yes, the business income's gone up, and yes, it has come down, but he's still got his 6 months of expenses. He's had to put on staff, take staff off. It's been very much a fluctuating exercise, but he's maintained that 6 months. He's never had a cash flow problem. He's never had an issue of paying the super, paying the tax office when it's due. No, never had a problem because he's putting that money aside. You have that money aside, and he's continuing to replenish it and build it up. So that's a big lesson that most people, don't get told when you start business. I've got this great idea, I'll start business. And the other side, so that's in starting a business, but the other side when businesses come unstuck on this is when they do a serious growth. So yes, sort of slow growth is fine, but if you get a big spurt, a big new contract, how are you going to fund that? How are you going to make that work? And I know of a business that's a direct competitor with a client of mine in Sydney that has just gone under, and the reason appears to be that they grew too fast and they didn't have the money behind them to keep it going. There was fundamentally nothing wrong with the business. They had good clients, they were producing good product, blah, 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 but they grew too fast. They bought a factory, they fitted it out, they spent all the money on it, and they did have more revenue, but the costs just outstripped the revenue, and at the same time, they've taken on this extra debt to take that on, and I'm not sure, because it wasn't my client, I'm not sure what their margins were, whether they really were pricing themselves correctly. So,
I've heard that story a lot, Amanda. Scaling is a big problem, but that comes back to your marketing. Same again, is your marketing. Yeah, if you're going to put more employees on, for instance, or put more more, buy more. You know, I've seen businesses they weren't big enough, and I remember a story from a lady I knew years ago when I first started business, and she said we've learned a lot. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She said, oh well, uh, instead of we tried to they because her and a partner and two other employees, they all worked at this business anyway. They broke away and they realized that they could make a squeam dollars just like the company they were working for if they just put their heads together and anyway. So the thing is they didn't realize that part of their business, a big part of their business, is transport. So they had to transport their product to where they had to go. So what they did was they leased their cars because that's what their employer had done. Okay, but what they didn't realize is that um, uh, it costs a lot more money in the long run to lease the car than it does to actually buy the car out permanently. So, uh, and the other thing is you got to buy the car out anyway when you finish your lease. Well, sorry, you got the option. I should
Yes.
say you got the option.
Correct.
You got the option. The problem is they were racking up this huge bill from the lease, and yeah, they just couldn't support it. They weren't making enough money to support the lease because they didn't just buy one; they bought four. And then because they all needed a car, and then they started hiring people to yeah. So yeah, they realized that it was cheaper to buy one car at the start or two cars, sorry, at the start. Then they could combine together to drive the car. Then they would have owned the car. Then they could have given that car to themselves, and then they could have bought another car. And then when they got bigger, then they could start leasing things.
Yeah.
Because leasing is good as a write-off. It's fantastic for reducing your tax bill.
Right.
But that's when you get, when you've scaled.
That's right. When you've got money to actually have a tax problem.
Yeah.
Like you've got to get to the point where you have the tax problem first. Yeah.
Yeah, the strategy was wrong at the start. It was great at the end to where they wanted to be when they were working for their employer, but at the start, so obviously their employer had been through the same thing.
Yeah, that's it.
So sometimes you need advice on reducing your margins. Yeah, reducing your expenses basically, especially at the start. And that's why I think restaurants as well. Restaurants, I think it's 95% go bust in the first 12 months. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's restaurants. I can't remember if that's all businesses or restaurants. I can't remember.
No, restaurants definitely have a massively high failure rate in the first 12 months. And it's not cheap to set up a restaurant unless you've taken over an existing restaurant facility which already has the kitchen in play and the tables and chairs and the cutlery and the crockery and blah blah blah. If that's in play, but then equally you usually pay a reasonably chunk of money to get that in place. And as consumers, we're so fickle with our restaurant attendants. Like, yeah, we'll try the new one. Yeah, okay, we'll give it a go. And we either, if you like it, that's fine. You might go back a bit, and then there's another new one up there. Oh, we'll go to that one, and then you forget the one that you were going to. So it's they're having to get new customers every night, kind of thing. Like it's that whole chase your tail to get people in the door exercise, and there are very few that have longevity in the general kind of restaurant trade. Obviously.
Especially cafes. I notice I don't drink coffee, but
neither do I. I don't go to cafes except for the cake.
But what was I say? People remember the cafe from their coffee because majority of the people drink coffee, and if you don't have a barista that can nail it every time, every day, you're going to find it difficult because that's the heart of your business.
Right.
And I see a lot of businesses go bust because I think to myself, in 12 months, I'm going to look at this business because this is the way I think that um, if they got crap coffee, then I can't see them, ex- going more than 12 months. And sure enough, majority of the time, they will go bust within 12 months. You'll see the doors closed up. And I just think to myself, okay. And I understand why. I get it. Understand why. Because the heart of the business was not working properly. And that whoever owned the business might have got it right in the first place. They might have had the right person in the start. But then as time went on, that's what I see anyway.
Yeah.
They'll get someone else in. They can't do the same job.
Correct.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then it just goes by the wayside.
Yeah. And what we don't see with that is the impact that has on the family relationships. That
Yes.
whole, it's not necessarily just the financial impact, because usually the reason they close the doors is financial, but it's the emotional, mental toll that it takes on the owners of the business, what it means to them. They've not only lost a chunk of money, they may now be in debt to a chunk of money, but now what's that doing to their relationships, to their own mental health, that whole failure kind of that comes
Yeah.
on, the guilt, oh, we shouldn't have spent the money on it. Like, there's so many layers of emotional and mental stress that comes with that. And we don't see that in the general. I mean, you see it if you know the people that own it, and you're friends with them, and you might be able to help them do something to support them and help them along. But I just worry about what that means. And the economy is not the greatest at the moment. I mean, the tax office is hard as at the moment. If you're not paying your bills on time in terms of tax bills, you're not paying your tax bills, they're hitting, and they're hitting hard, and they're taking no prisoners. And I've been, I've attended federal court where the tax office in a half-hour block in front of the judge has put, I think the docket had 20 odd on it, and pretty much 18 of those were put into liquidation. And they're doing that docket multiple days of the week across the different states. So they're putting hundreds of businesses into liquidation every week at the moment. And some of them
Yeah.
are
Because
small amounts of money, and I know clients that are a lot more money that they haven't got to that point. And I'm just thinking, you're shutting down these little people. You're putting their little business into liquidation. What's the ramification for them? What are they going to do now? Are they going to be able to go and find a job? Are they going to be able to start something else? Where do they end up? And that worries me. And I guess that's, and coming back to your first question, that's what gets me up in the morning. It's like, what can I do to help to make sure these businesses don't get into that position? Or if they're heading in that position, that you do something that can mitigate it and call it before it becomes that disaster financially, mentally, emotionally. Because I'm not a mental health person at all. It's not my thing. I'm fine. I'm a numbers girl. I'm a systems girl. I'm a business girl. But I know what that does. And I've seen it time and
absolutely.
again, and that breaks my heart.
Sometimes they come to me. I was going to say. So to expand on what you said before, because I do go to a lot of networking meetings, and I've seen presentations from accountants and financial experts over the years, and you got to remember that from 2020 to 2024, they pretty much the ATO basically just didn't do much at all when it
Right.
come to businesses. They weren't doing it. They pretty much stopped auditing completely, and now here's the backlash. Why?
Yep.
Because they got to make money. At the end of
Right.
the day, they have to make money. They got to justify to their peers, to their superiors, I should say, superiors,
Yep.
that Yes, we're collecting money. We are actually, because that's what they are. They're basically debt collectors. That's what they are.
Correct.
So, and that's why these businesses, and like you said, at the end of the day, does the government really care about the small businesses? Well, let's ask the ATO.
Mm.
Let's ask the ATO. Let's see what they say. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be positive. But yeah, so you've done well, mate. We're up to 55 minutes, so I'll just wrap it up. So just talk to us quickly. I've got your book there on the screen, so people can pick that up. That's the Cash Flow Queen.
Yep.
Is that what it's called? The Cash Flow Queen?
No, so the book, there are a couple of books there. The first one that's useful is Unscramble Your Numbers. So that's a very good book for business owners to get an understanding of their basic numbers. The second book is Strangled by the Numbers, which has a lot more of my personal stories and a bit more sort of context to it. It's not quite as technical as the first one. And not that the first one's technical, because one of the things that people tell me is I simplify the accounting into words that the layperson that doesn't understand it can understand. So it's just getting that basic knowledge across. So the first one, the red book, what I call the red book, Unscramble Your Numbers, is the sort of starting point, and then the sort of got an extra layer of stories and examples in Strangled by the Numbers.
All right, so I'll move on to the last two questions. So tell us, who's your ideal client? Who do you like to help the most, Amanda?
I love to help food manufacturers that perhaps have been in business for about maybe 5 years, whether they're wholesalers, whether they're just manufacturing, selling, and who perhaps are not making as much money as they used to make, and things aren't quite as good as they are, and they're realizing that what got them to this point is not going to get them to the next point. And then realizing they need a little bit more help than what they currently have, and they're looking for support in automation, systems, financial control, cash flow, and pulling those numbers together, pulling that production data together with the financial data.
Yep, and that's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us, what ideas or informations would you give to provide lifelong longevity? Please, Amanda.
That's a really interesting one, because I have to say, I come from a long living family. So my paternal grandfather died at 104. Most of my uncles were well in their 90s. My father passed at 97. And I'm very excited to say that my mum is about to turn 100 in a couple of weeks. And I don't know why I'm so excited about it. It's just blowing my mind. So I expect to live a long life, but I think the one thing that I actually take from what my parents, and we've touched on it earlier, is go back to it's sort of by default, go back to the basics. Stop eating all this processed food. Stop eating all this stuff that's pre-produced. You know, what my parents were brought up on, they bought the raw products. So, they bought the vegetables, and they cooked the vegetables. They didn't buy the frozen stuff. They didn't buy the pre-made, potato and whatever. So they cooked the potato and made a potato bake. So going back to that basic cooking that doesn't require putting in all these additives and chemicals that are in these other products. And I think that then takes away all this junk, which I know you know more about than I do, but all this junk that we put in our bodies that is what's killing us younger. And obviously a bit of exercise doesn't hurt. I need to get back to my walking. I started when I moved up here, and then kind of got a bit hot in Christmas, and I haven't started again. But it's after my mum's birthday, I'm heading back onto the walking trail again to hit the exercise. But I think thinking about what you're eating and some exercise, and I guess I don't drink tea and coffee. I don't drink alcohol. That's choice. I don't like them. Maybe strange on one or both of those. But I think that all helps too. So just keep the water coming in, but you don't need to be eating or drinking. There's other things that are, I do eat things I shouldn't eat, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect by any stretch of imagination. But I think, yeah, coming back to the basics of the food is vital.
Or you'll be waiting for the letter for your mum's 100th birthday from the king, yeah?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Very excited.
So, so there's Amanda's socials there. It's been running across, and like I showed you before, that's Amanda's website and also her link to her books as well. So thank you very much for coming on, Amanda. And because you didn't bag me too much, here's an offer. So yeah, just put in free access. You get access to my health club. So it's a bronze membership. There's 9 modules. I teach you about EFT, emotional freedom technique, meditation, nutrition, exercise, roadblocks in your mind. I teach you about disc profiling, who you are. I teach you about Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and Chinese herbal medicine, how they work, and also the 8 leading chronic diseases that are killing hundreds of thousands of Australians every year. So you get access to that as well. No one asked any questions today. It's unusual. I think it's because we sort of pushed it forward a little bit, and it's a little bit earlier in the morning. Usually we have it about 10 a.m. But thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
My associate, she'll give you the links to the socials that I've recorded this on, gone live on. So appreciate your time, Amanda. Thank you very much for coming on and giving us some gold nuggets of information. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, guys, you've been watching the Get Busy Living podcast with a wonderful Amanda Fisher. You have a great day, guys, and I'll talk to you.